Well, welcome back. We're in session 3 now of programming your child for success. So in the last lesson, we ended with the idea that God has actually set things up in our favor. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this lesson. I love this lesson. It's super exciting. All right, so here we go. So yes, it actually is rigged in our favor. And we've in the past probably felt like parenting has been this struggle. Well, when you learn the keys that I'm going to teach you in this course, and we're getting there, then you'll see how simple it is. Once you have the right key, the door just opens, right? And the reason I'm taking some time to get to where I actually teach you what you need to do is I'm trying to give you some understanding, so you'll understand what you're doing, why it works. Otherwise, you'll just be trying to do something you don't fully understand. So I want to get you in the right mindset so this will click once you apply the tools. So I always give practical tools in my courses. That's what it's all about for me. Is like my first parenting class I ever went to many years ago. I came home the first day with tools that got me the results I wanted, and now I was hooked. So that's what I'm all about. All right. So let's look at the setup, how God has set it up in our favor to make it so easy for us as parents to do exactly what I'm training you in this course, to program your child so that he's on autopilot. And once you program him, you just give the command and it's automatic response. And I mean, I know that sounds impossible, but it's actually, as I said many times already, this is the way God designed it to be. I mean, doesn't it make sense that He set things up for our success? And so you're going to see how that works. So how did God set things up? We're going to learn a little bit about how a young child's brain develops, because this is key. This is something that we've missed as Christians. And like I said, we've been trying to relate to them as miniature adults, and their brain is wired completely different. They're actually wired to be programmed, not taught. So let's look at a baby's brain. So when a baby is born, for about the first 3 years of their life, they're in a brainwave state called delta brainwaves. Okay, that's all they have for the first 3 years. Well, these are the same brainwaves that you and I have when we're in a deep sleep. And this is why you have no conscious memory before age 3, because you weren't even conscious. You were actually in a subconscious state for those entire 3 years. And, one famous psychologist, Dr. Joe Dispenza, put it this way, and he said, it's as if they're asleep with their eyes open. Well, think about when you're asleep. Do you judge or evaluate information? No, everything just goes in. So they're totally receptive. They don't have any ability to judge or evaluate information. Everything goes in as fact. They don't have any ability to reason or logic yet. In fact, the brain develops from the bottom up. There's 4 distinct stages. And the last part to develop is this frontal lobe. And that is where your logic and reasoning takes place and all of your higher level thinking skills. Well, that part of the brain doesn't even develop till much later in life. So they're down here in this dream-like state. And so they walk around in that unconscious state, right? So let's see here where I'm at. So during this time, this is when their subconscious is formed. So you don't have any conscious memories before age 3 because you weren't conscious. But everything you experienced in those first 3 years is filed away in your subconscious mind, and it creates all of your beliefs, your attitudes, your hopes, your dreams, your fears, everything you believe about yourself, the world, and even God. Psychologists tell us is shaped by age 3. 95% of it is shaped by age 3. And this is what we call our worldview. So a child's entire 95%, I'm going to correct myself, 95% of their worldview is shaped by age 3. That's an incredible thought to think about, but it also gives us as parents this window of opportunity because we are the ones that are primarily shaping their subconscious thoughts, okay? Let's see. So now that's 0 to 3. And you may be thinking, oh, well, my child's 4, 5, 6 or older. Well, the next phase isn't much different. So they're awakening from that dreamlike state, and they're in what now they develop theta brainwave states. These are the brain waves that people have when they meditate. So people who meditate, what they're doing is they're quieting these busier parts of their brain and getting into that theta brainwave state. So your child is in that state. And the reason people do this is because they want to reprogram their subconscious thought patterns. And that's why it's such a rage nowadays with all these life coaches and mentors and trainers to they're teaching people to meditate and get into that brain state so that they can have direct access to their subconscious thought. Well, your child from up to 7 years old is in that state, so you still have direct access to their subconscious mind up until about age 7. Okay, so still highly suggestible. They still just about believe anything you tell them. So let's listen to what the experts say about this early childhood years up to about age 7. So Dr. Bruce Lipton, who is a developmental biologist and the author of The Biology of Belief, he says, in their highly programmable state, children record vast amounts of information they need to survive in the environment, but they do not have the capacity to consciously evaluate the information while it is being downloaded. So he's talking about those first few years of life up to about age 7. So they're not evaluating that information, but it's all just being downloaded into their subconscious, okay? And then Dr. Paul Hegstrom, who is a Christian psychologist, he wrote the book Broken Children, Grown-Up Pain. A lot of good stuff in there. It's kind of a negative title, but he talks about how our childhood affects our adulthood. He says prior to puberty, a child lacks the chemicals in the brain. So he's just talking about physical chemicals here. So the actual just physiology of the brain. So he lacks the chemicals in the brain to see the big picture, weigh options, make decisions based on outcomes. He says, and he goes on and he says, young children are impulsive and totally reactive to their environment. So what he's saying is young children don't have, and he even says before puberty, so they don't have the ability to make decisions based on options, choices, and different factors and make a choice based on all the possible outcomes. But young children, impulsive and completely reactive. So they're not choosing how to behave. They're just reacting to stimulus around them. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, it means your toddler is not weighing options. Whoops, my screen went blank. Don't do that. He's not weighing options. He's not considering the consequences of his action. He's not making decisions and choosing a course of action. He's completely impulsive. So what is a toddler like? If you have one, you know, this may sound familiar. I call this a snapshot of a toddler. There's no awareness of right or wrong, and this is actually scriptural. Deuteronomy 1:37, you can go and read that. I'm not going to go into it for time's sake, but the Father is saying that children have no knowledge of good and evil. They don't understand right and wrong. I mean, that's why we try to teach it to them, right? But you're learning now that's probably not the best approach to parenting because they don't have the ability to understand choices and make decisions, even if they do know right and wrong, okay? They live in the moment. So yesterday's forgotten, tomorrow doesn't exist. And that's why if you tell them they can have something later, they throw a fit because later doesn't exist to them. You might as well say you can't have it. They want everything right now. They're driven by desire, curiosity, and survival. So again, completely reactive. Whatever's going on, they react to it. Either out of desire, they see something they want, and they just grab it. Or curiosity, what is that? And that's a good thing because that's how they learn about the world around them. And survival, of course, that's a good thing to be driven by survival. They don't recognize authority. Everyone is the same to them. So pulling that I'm your parent card or I'm your authority, they don't understand that. And it's a good thing. They just see everyone as an equal. So when we learn to just relate to them as another precious human being, it helps so much when we can just change our perception or point of view from that I can't talk, from that mentality of hierarchy, like I'm your authority, you're beneath me. It really isn't scriptural anyway, because God doesn't consider externals. Once again, like, yes, you have responsibility for your child and you have responsibility to your child, but in God's eyes, you have equal value and worth as humans. He's just as valuable to God as you. And so we want to treat him as an equal in the spirit, in God's eyes, equal value and worth. Treat others the way you want to be treated, okay? So losing that kind of authoritarian mentality is very helpful. And just see yourself as your child's coach. You're just coaching him into life. You want him to be all that he can be. And so instead of bringing down the hammer, come alongside. I call it heart-to-heart parenting. I have a course entitled that. But, we tend to go at parenting head-to-head from the typical Christian parenting mentality. We want to overpower our kids. But when we learn to come alongside, we can empower them instead of overpowering them. Because if you're always overpowering them and just forcing them to behave the way you want them to, then you're not giving them any skills to be self-directed, to any life skills. So when we come alongside and we empower them, we equip them for life. It's such a better, more life-giving way to parent. And it really is, what we're called to do. So they don't recognize authority. They have no understanding of social norms or standards. They don't know what's expected, they don't know what acceptable behavior is. So instead of, once again, punishing them for that, we just come alongside and we train them. And we're going to get into how to do that. I know you want to learn that, but have to kind of undo some of these mentalities that we've been taught in the church, because they're destructive and they're not helpful. They're not helping us. And most Christian parents I talk to are at their wits' end. They're just not getting anywhere with their kids. And they expected it to be easy. Well, it is easy when you do it the way that God intended. Okay? And the other thing about a toddler is a desire is the same thing as a need. Again, they don't have the ability in their mind to evaluate whether something is a need or a desire. If they want something, let's see, if they're hungry and they want food because they're hungry, it's the same thing as them seeing a sparkling, shiny new toy and they want it. So needs and desires are the same to them. So don't try to, talk to him through logic, explaining why he doesn't need that new toy, because he doesn't have logical thinking skills yet. So if your young child is impulsive and reactive, then who is in the driver's seat? Well, you guessed it, no one, until you take the controls and you begin to create the programming that will then direct his steps for all the days of his life. So that's the good news. And that's how God's rigged it in our favor, is that your baby comes into the world. He's a blank slate. He's ready to be programmed. He's like wet cement. And whatever you program in there is going to harden and dry. And it's, like I said, very difficult to change later in life. But when they're brand new, they're wide open. And you can speak directly into their heart and create that programming and create that operating system that they need. So you get to decide. And this is a huge window of opportunity and also a huge responsibility, as you can see. So, so just a little bit more about why God's made it so easy for us to do this is that, as we've already said, young children, babies, toddlers, they don't have the ability to evaluate information. And so if you tell them they are, messy, or they always spill their milk, or they never listen, or you have to tell them 1,000 times, they'll believe that. They don't understand these innuendos or implications of things you're saying. They simply hear the words black and white. I have to be told 1,000 times. I never listen. I always spill my milk. And that goes in, and they believe it. And so they live out of that. And then we punish them for being that way, and we're telling them that's the way they are. So you can see how powerful and destructive our words can be as parents. So he doesn't question anything. He may object to things like time to get ready for bed. And, no, I don't want to go to bed. But he doesn't question information that comes in. Everything he hears is taken in as fact and experiences. So it isn't just words, but it's how you respond to him as well. So if a baby cries and you respond to him and you pick him up and you figure out, why is he crying? Then you are letting him know that his needs are important, that the world is a safe place, and that you're there for him. People who let their babies cry, I have a whole, don't get me on my babies crying soapbox. Let your babies cry. It does so much damage to their emotional health and their psychology and even their chemistry. And they grow up in this state of, I'm all alone. They can't even function in a normal state. Their digestion system can't function. All sorts of things happen to their body and their soul because you didn't respond to their cries when they're a baby. And I hope, no condemnation, we can there's a lot of teachings out there in the Christian world that are very destructive, and they're not God's way of raising children. Anyway, so hopefully what you're learning today will help you see that. But babies do cry because they need something. They don't cry because they're spoiled. So your child believes whatever you tell him, whatever you say to him or about him, he believes. And I'll prove that to you in 2 words: Santa Claus. Yeah, why would anyone believe in such a ridiculous idea as a man who flies around in a sleigh, pulled by reindeer, going down chimneys, and all the nonsense around Santa Claus? Why would they believe that? It doesn't make any sense at all. It's because they're wired to believe. And just because you tell them Santa Claus exists, or if you do, some parents do, some don't, he believes it. And it isn't until about age 8 that he begins to figure out that that's a myth. And interestingly enough, age 8 is when a child's ability to differentiate between fact and fiction, that's when it begins to develop. Not till age 8 can they tell truth from fantasy. So they watch all those cartoons and everything on TV. They think it's real. I could tell you a story. I'm getting a little long-winded on this video, but and I got a few more slides to go through. But when my granddaughter was about 4 years old and that movie Cars was real popular, she was sitting in the back seat of my car and we got stuck in traffic, and she goes, "Grandma, why don't you just do like Lightning McQueen and drive over top of the cars?" And that was reality to her because she'd seen it in a movie. So you have to be careful what you let your kids watch. So children are wired to believe. And that's how God set it up in our favor. They're wired to believe. They believe whatever you tell them. That's their strength. And I believe that's what Jesus was referring to in Matthew 18:3, where he said, unless you are converted and become as a little child, you shall by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, what's required to enter heaven? You just believe. You believe the gospel. You believe on the Lord Jesus, and you're saved. And so if you tell your child Jesus died to save them, they can live forever with God in heaven, they'll believe it. You can get your child saved just like that because they'll believe whatever you tell them. So instead of telling them about Jesus, lead them to Jesus. Tell them who Jesus is for them, and that he's with them, and that he's in them, and he wants to be with them, and loves them and save them, and they'll just grow up in that awareness that Jesus is their Savior and Lord. So they believe without question wholeheartedly, and that's their strength. So I think that's just about it. So I just want to add this real quickly before we end. The reality is you are programming your child, either by accident or on purpose. Whether you know it or not, everything you say, everything you do, every interaction, everything your child experiences is programming him. As I've already said, that becomes the foundation of their entire life. And so it's time that we become intentional about this. First of all, aware. I hope this has expanded your awareness of the window of opportunity you have as a parent to literally create the foundation for your child's entire life. And so it's just this opportunity that God has given us. And he's given us the ability and the opportunity to do this. And it's our responsibility to do it as parents. So that's all I have for this lesson. And in the next lesson, we are going to talk about, whoops, I got out of order here. Let's see, where are we? Yeah. So in the next lesson, we're going to get on with how to do this. And so we're getting to the meat of it. So I hope you enjoyed this and it was helpful. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and God bless.